Hello, everyone. Hey, She Army. Welcome to episode 31 live of the Simply She podcast. Fashion meets feminine power. I'm your host, Crystal Renee, and today we're going to be discussing how fashion has the ability to amplify your feminine power. So, since we're doing this thing live, I always say there's no pause, there's no rewind, and we're definitely unfiltered. And we also want audience participation. So, first things first, we are using StreamYard. So, please make sure that you allow StreamYard access in order to be able to make comments under your name. So just go ahead and do that. You can definitely revoke access at any time, but if you want to make comments and not ask questions under your name, please go ahead and allow StreamYard access. Don't be shy. We want your comments and we want your questions throughout the show. So our appearance and how we choose to express ourselves through fashion and dress can provide some insight into our journey in pursuit of harnessing our feminine energy or living within the divine feminine. So when you're truly able to harness your feminine energy, you project, protect, and provide that sense of balance to yourself and to others. Our journey to be able to harness our feminine energy looks and it feels different for everyone. And it's also a part of our journey in slaying hard every day. So today's discussion really centers around the Slay Hard Everyday principle number one, which is know thyself. And in knowing yourself, we can truly realize or strengthen our feminine power. So my guest this evening is Emily Daccarett, and she's going to talk a little bit about her journey, her brands, and how fashion harnesses feminine power. Emily is a singer and songwriter and fashion designer. She's been working on combining her two passions, music and fashion. And she loves to create a sort of escapism with her music and fashion. So welcome, Emily.
Hi.
So tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself and how you got into the fashion industry.
Sure. So honestly, since I can remember, I loved fashion. My mom really introduced me into this world. She was always she actually wanted to be a fashion designer when she was younger, but it just at the time didn't really feel like for her, back then it wasn't really like a choice, I guess. So with me growing up, she used to sew and as a hobby, and I just loved being around her while she was sewing, and I would go with her and pick out fabric, and I just loved, and this is just one of my favorite memories, that I would go under her sewing table while she was sewing because I loved the sound of the sewing machine. And I would grab like little scraps as they fell, and she would teach me how to stitch, and so I'd make little clothes for my Barbie dolls. So from a very, very young age, I want to say around 5, 6, I just knew this was something I wanted to do as I got older. And I was also in dance since I was 5 until college, and I always tried to do things that allowed me to express myself through fashion and through what I wore. And my mom and I would always like make out little outfits for myself, whether it was from sewing or just styling. And then when it was time to really decide what I wanted to do, it was just so obvious. So I decided to move to France and study fashion design there. I always felt like I would find myself as a designer in Paris, and being around all the designers I looked up to. So going to France and just getting to design and study fashion design and then work for different brands there was just a dream come true. And then after graduating and after a few years interning, I decided to come to LA and to start my own brand here. I really wanted to be able to control what I wanted to do, to control my time and how I wanted to express myself creatively. And I just felt LA being the newer like fashion city, just felt the perfect place for myself to kind of kind of create a different way, not really have to follow other footsteps, but really feel like, okay, I can pave my own way. And it's not that I criticize any of the other cities, but I feel like when you are in like the fashion capitals, you kind of feel like you kind of have to follow a certain path to eventually get, if you're lucky, artistic director of a certain brand. But that's not always the case. And, there are only so many companies and there are so many designers. And I just didn't want to be, not that I'm not a team member, but I really wanted to work with my own creativity and not have to work for a different brand. So that's what really made me come back to LA and start my brand here. And while I was working on my first collection, that's how I fell into music. And I needed a song for my runway show. So we were getting really close to the deadline, and I didn't have the license for the song I wanted. So I went to a film composer, a young film composer in LA. His name is S.P. Snasades, and we both loved French pop and started writing the song right then and there. And that's where I remembered my love of music, and it just felt so right to start working with original music along with my fashion. So that's how I started my brand, and kind of just like didn't really know that I was setting up this new pathway eventually, which would lead me to pursuing music now also as a full-time career.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your brand. I looked on your website. I looked at some of your pieces. I was like, oh, this is really edgy. I loved a lot of what I saw. So your statement says it's a bold, sexy brand that explores the seductiveness of feminine power. So tell us a little bit about that, how you came up with that, and what that means to you.
So yes, my brand is it definitely pushes boundaries. I think just like I was really inspired by Yves Saint Laurent, Coco Chanel, like the great designers of the past, how they were influenced by masculine pieces into feminine wear. And for me, the number one who did that just beautifully was Yves Saint Laurent. So already I kind of was drawn to having to kind of working a bit more provocatively with my designs. But then also just with my own personal experience, as a student, a fashion student, I was walking down the street one day and just, I mean, it felt like it was a joke. I was being harassed and catcalled. And to this crazy extent. So I ended up going back to my apartment, getting into my room, crawling under the sheets, and feeling really, really bad about myself, and just thinking like, okay, it's my fault. It's because of the way I'm dressing. I'm inviting this to come to me. And then after a minute of thinking that way, I just got so angry at the thought that I was blaming myself for the way that people were treating me. And I vowed then and there that as a designer, I would design pieces and collections for women so that they could feel sexy and empowered and know that it is their right to dress however they want. If they want to dress conservatively, they can, in between to the far, as sexy as you want, but it's just you. And it doesn't mean that this gives anyone the reason to make you feel like they can treat you or call you or say, whatever they want to you. So that's what I wanted to do with my brand. I really wanted women to feel sexy, to feel beautiful, to feel okay, to want to be sexy in a sophisticated way, in a way that makes it like for you and not for anyone else. Mm-hmm. So that's what my brand is about. It's just about exploring the seductive side of fashion and how you can use it for yourself. And also, through storytelling too. So my pieces tend to reflect a lot of what I love, which is history. And I love the 1970s and just like that futuristic style. For me, it just feels timeless. And I love really blending simplicity with just very intricate fabric that makes it really hard to work with. And yeah, just something special, something that makes you feel like you. So that's my brand.
Well, wonderful. I definitely can appreciate like the sexiness and the edginess. So, like we talked a little bit, I have a pole studio. So, a lot of that is like, women empowerment, and we like wear super sexy clothes and the fishnets, the bodysuits, like the really high heels, because that's what makes us feel special, sexy. And in the moment, we're able to like be our most authentic selves. And that kind of brings me to my next question. You talked about wanting to pave your own way in the industry and not necessarily having to work for another company, because your style, your voice wouldn't necessarily be captured. So can you talk about a little bit about like what was that like for you? Like what headspace were you in when you finally realized or decided, I have to go a different direction in order to be able to express my most authentic self?
Yeah, I think I was in my third or fourth internship, and I had kind of, I mean, I always had this like game plan of, okay, when I'm this age, I want to be this, and by the time I'm 25, I want to have my own brand and all this stuff. So once you kind of get into the real world and start working and start, well, first studying and, seeing like, okay, well, it's taking me a little bit longer, and then hearing everyone else, good intentioned advice, but sometimes it kind of puts you down. So I had kind of accepted, okay, I guess I'm going to be working for a company for maybe 10 years, which is kind of the route that people tend to take, and see where I'll get to. Um, but as I was working on a collection for a designer, and this particular designer at the time, they were not in the studio because they were starting a family. So I was I was in charge of just kind of getting the new collection and designing it and producing the prototypes. So by the time that we were showing, a lot of people were coming from like press and stylists and to congratulate the designer. And never once like was my name mentioned. So it's not that I thought like, oh, I want all the praise for me, but I just kind of, it felt a little bit like I'm giving you everything for like very little in return. I mean, barely even a living salary. And that, plus the conversation I had with another designer who worked out of very prestigious brand, he asked me, what is it that you want to do? And I said, well, eventually I want to have my own brand. And he told me, well, if you want to do it, you should do it now, before you get to an age where you have too many responsibilities, you have a family, and at that point, you're probably not going to want to do your own brand. So after talking to him, and then just recently having gone through, showing that collection, I decided that, yeah, I needed to just try. I needed to come to LA, because I felt like, well, LA has that potential. It doesn't, it still is relatively new to the fashion scene, and we're still kind of creating our own identity. So it just felt right to come to LA and do that. And, if I was going to fall a million times, I'd rather do it now that I don't have too many obligations versus later on. So that was the main thing that catapulted me to come and do my own brand.
Yeah, so I wanted to highlight that because I think it's important for the listeners to kind of hear the story and like how how sometimes you have to pivot
Mhm.
when you kind of faced with a situation that makes you think or makes you reevaluate like what it is that you're doing. It doesn't necessarily have to be some kind of a life-changing event. It just could be something as simple as you're doing something that you normally do every day, and there's like a light bulb, like a realization, like, oh, you know, is this my passion, right? Is this what I'm really supposed to be doing? And you kind of have that thought, like, man, maybe I should be doing something completely different, or maybe it's something I should be doing for myself rather than doing it for someone else. So that's kind of why I just wanted to like highlight that, like, it's kind of something that you were doing anyway, but also taking into account the perspective of someone else who was like, probably a close friend, someone who had a good understanding of the industry and understanding of you as a person, kind of gave you that advice to be able to take a leap of faith and, do what you felt was the best thing to do and best thing for you. So I did want to ask, how do you think that your brand and collection would help the everyday woman harness their feminine power?
I think because, well, the way I look at clothes is it's an extension of myself. So that's how I design. Not that it's an extension of myself in particular, but an extension of women. So I feel like I design pieces that make you feel confident. The way that I personally design is on a mannequin. So I don't design on a flat surface. I'll do my patterns after I've actually molded them onto a mannequin, so I can see exactly how the body would look and move. And so even though these pieces might be a bit more I get this a lot, where sometimes people will be like, oh, I was expecting it to be so uncomfortable because it's so fitted, but it's actually like I can move, I can bend, and that, I think that makes a big difference because I do design on a 3D body versus just cutting my patterns on the table. And I feel like when women are wearing something that they feel comfortable, the fit feels good, you feel good, automatically it just raises your confidence. You just feel like you have so much more control. You don't have to worry about what's going on here because it's set. You're good. And it's not the outfit that makes the woman, but it's the woman that makes the outfit. And that's something that I also try to do with my pieces, make it where you can, if you want to follow how I style it, great, but these are just for you. These are tools for you to use for yourself. And hopefully you like the story. So maybe a little bit of that story kind of sits in your mind when you wear something that I've designed, and you kind of feel like you're the heroine of that story. Yeah.
Awesome. And I love that you said you like um, mold the fabric on a mannequin. I think that makes it, like you said, more real. Because I know that I personally have, purchased a lot of clothing that does not fit well, and it is quite expensive. And so I'm just like, okay, like what, like how are we making these clothes here? But like you said, it's the woman that makes the clothes. So eventually you find pieces and things that speak to you and that reflect your personal style and where you are in your journey as a woman. But I love the fact that you have a story that kind of goes with your pieces, and you highlight the woman that's wearing them as a heroine. That's pretty cool. So definitely in line with what I'm all about, and like that feeling of almost being like a goddess, wearing your clothing. So that's really cool. So I know we talked briefly about you switching from like season to season to just putting out pieces. Can you tell us a little bit more like about how you made that decision and what does that look like?
Yeah. So I was getting ready for a fashion show in New York Fashion Week, and I had just finished. It felt like I had just finished doing the collection prior. So I got a bit burnt out, and even that was when my carpal tunnel just flared, and I couldn't
Uh-oh. I think we're frozen. This is what happens when we're live. All right, guys, hold on. Looks like we're having some technical issues. Oh. Bear with us, guys. It looks like Emily's getting back on.
Hi. Can
Yep.
you hear me now?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Oh my gosh.
Hold on. Yeah. Can't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay. Hopefully it'll get better. We've had I'm actually in my where I grew up near Bass Lake. Well, not that close, but 40 minutes from it. So I don't know if it's just what's going on with California because we've been having really bad internet here.
Oh.
But so yes, the collection I was getting ready for my New York debut, and just hanging on by a thread, really, mentally and physically. And after that collection, I took a month off and went to France and just needed to recenter and really just take care of my mental health. Really, I was in under a lot of stress, and that's when I just, again, another eureka moment, I guess, where I thought, no, I need to take care of myself, take care of my health. That can't be on the back burner anymore. And that's when I started to really think, because I am an independent designer and an independent brand, it makes it very hard to kind of just keep at the whole season after season, and even, and I can't even compete with the bigger brands that are sometimes putting out 8 collections per year. It started out with 2, and now they've added resort and swim and just all these different collections. So I took that time off, and then I thought, like, well, instead of looking at it like a shortcoming for being an indie designer, I decided to use that as my advantage of, like, okay, well, then I'm going to change it for myself, and I'm going to go seasonless and not necessarily put out a collection like, okay, I'm ready now, so I'll do it then, but more have it to be it where I'll put it out once it's ready, and have it be more of a continuous collection where taking into account what I had designed the past collection and just adding more pieces so that you can interchange between collections and make it more as as how we shop ourselves anyway, that it's not that we get rid of our entire collection or our entire closet, but we'll add pieces to kind of evolve and just bring a little bit of change to what we currently have. So that's when I started to switch to that mentality and make my collections a little smaller, more into between 10 to 15 looks, and have it be seasonless, and just it be more about, okay, this is the story, and the next collection is the second part of that story, and so just have it continue, and yeah, and just not really follow the fashion calendar, which I feel like now in 2020, already last year brands were no longer really following the fashion calendar, and definitely this year with everything that's going on, it was impossible to keep up with that schedule.
Yeah.
And And I have to say, as someone that's working in the fashion industry, this is something that at least it's made fashion slow down a bit, which I think it needed. It needed to slow down, not just for our planet, because all the chemical waste and all the way like it's just so bad, all this fast fashion, not really being conscious of, or not really caring where it's coming from, whether people are being paid what they should be paid, treated how they should be treated, working in good conditions. And unfortunately, when you are buying clothes that cost, an entire outfit, and it costs you like $10, $15, and as like a lot of the fast fashion brands that we see today, you just have to know, like, the people that are making it are not being treated how they should be treated. So it's just all those things where I didn't want to be, as a designer, I set out, like, I don't want to do those mistakes or to work that certain way. So why am I trying to compete with that calendar and that system, yeah. So that was really why I just switched everything to being more, just more at the moment and when it feels right. And that way I could also work on multiple projects at a time.
Yeah, I think, just in general, the world needs to slow down, and, kind of give us cause for pause and kind of look at what we're doing in everything, not,
Mm-hmm.
not just fashion, but, kind of giving us perspective on where we're going, what we're doing, how we treat each other, what's really important. I think a lot of those things have come to light, with everything that we're experiencing in 2020. So it's interesting that regardless of industry, we're kind of seeing those ripple effects.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm gonna take just a quick sec to see if we can troubleshoot your camera so that we can get you back on camera.
Sure.
Do you want to like try turning it off and turning it back on and see if that works?
Sure. Let's see, I'm gonna try to reload the page too.
Okay. Sorry, guys. This is, sometimes we have technical difficulties on live broadcasts. So I said it at the beginning, and here we are. So, oh, okay, Emily's back. I think we got her. There we go. I was just explaining to the listeners, I was like, this is what happens when we do live. Sometimes we can't control what happens.
Sure.
Awesome. So we're back. Your beautiful face is back. So I did want to ask about you combining your two passions, music and fashion. You talked a little bit about the song that you wrote. So, like, what kinds of things are you working on now? Do you do like a song with each piece, or pieces, or how do you work through that creative process?
So I started out doing the collections first, and then writing the music around the story that I had done for the collection. So it was always like a little cherry on top. Now that, I'm writing music that is more, it's not really like meant to be just for like a fashion film anymore. It's like a straight out pop song or pop rock. Um, I feel like now they just influence each other. So the music that I'm writing right now, I'm working on a new album, and that one, it's a bit more 70s rock pop. That's what I started doing in the beginning. And with my last EP that I released, it was more electronic. So I wanted to go back to what I really love, which is more, I love electronic, but I wanted to go back to like that 70s rock. And yeah, right now, since I've been doing the music first, I feel like that's what's inspiring me to design the collection. So it's more of writing the story for the album, and now that story I'm translating into what I'm designing. So it depends. It depends, I think, on my mood. But generally, I the collection and the songs kind of go hand in hand. And I don't think I've yet written a song that's just for a particular piece. But I might, you never know. But right now it's more like just encompassing the whole story.
Yeah. So we've been talking about a lot on the show, and then I've been doing a lot in the She Army group about like dialing up your feminine energy, and part of that is being creative. So making things. So like the whole fashion, like being a fashion designer and also a singer and a songwriter is all living in the realm of like boosting your feminine energy, which is cool because I love that. And definitely like taking us through your creative process is like, super helpful and like super cool to get like an insight into that. Tell us a little bit, and I think listeners might be kind of curious about maybe the back end or the business end, like, so like what all goes into that as like a fashion designer. So like once you've like created something, how do you put it out there to the world? Like how does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, right now because of like social media, um it's not that I don't see the purpose of doing a runway show, but I don't really feel like I need to do one, which is great because it's not like I could do it this year anyway. Um, but yeah, it's just I when I first with how I started with my brand was more I would tease certain things on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and then wait for Fashion Week and to showcase during LA Fashion Week or Paris or New York. And that was like the big push, right? But now I kind of do it in a way where it's a bit like teasing more of a movie, because I love movies, I love film, and I look to film for a lot of inspiration, not just for the collections and writing songs, but also how to kind of frame my business. And I feel like, especially now that we're doing everything virtually, it just kind of made sense. So I think I want to say like the past 2 years, I kind of switched up for everything being more virtual anyway. So showing people the collections through short like clips or short fashion films, so you see how it moves, you see how it reacts in like a natural environment. Um, Through photography, I've gotten to work with some amazing photographers, and we try to really tell the story through the photographs so that it feels like a silent movie almost through pictures. And and yeah, I think just I I pride myself a lot in searching and constantly working on my brand identity. So I put it out there online, and that's how I get my stuff out, and also reaching out to models and doing like cross promoting. The I mean, I just think it's insane because from when I was studying to now, the like the whole industry has changed. It really has. Because even a couple years ago, it was still like, you needed to work with a press agent and work with a showroom, and they then would get like your clothes in magazines and editorials and fashion shows. And so you really needed that. But now you don't really need that. I feel like you could do it a lot yourself, and people no longer feel like, well, I don't trust you because you're not represented by so and so. It's more of like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing it from the designer, I'm seeing it from the stylist, and I feel like now there's this like direct communication with the consumers, which is amazing because it feels like how I always dreamt fashion to be, which was how I would see it in the movies, like in like the golden age of Hollywood, where everything felt so intimate. Like you had this connection to the designer and you had this connection to the clothes because you knew who was making it, and it just felt so personal. But that's not something that I got to experience myself firsthand because that ended a long time ago. And now I feel like we can go back to that. You can go and start having this like very intimate relationship with the people who follow you, with your consumers. So yeah, I've really just been doing everything virtually right now.
Okay, perfect. Tell us about some new projects you're working on, if you can.
Yeah. So working on my new album, which is so exciting. Uh, it's it's either 9 or 10 songs. We haven't completed that. We haven't like set which one, but I'm so excited to showcase this new album because it's really taking us back to how we used to do music, which was meant for the fashion films. My producer and I, and we're working closely with some really talented musicians, and just to have it feel like, I mean, I romanticize the 70s. I know I do. Um, but that's what I try to recreate, which is my fantasy of how I feel like the 70s were. And I'm so excited for this album because I feel like it'll be a piece of that, like a little window into that world, into that dreamlike fantasy I have of the 70s. And I'm also working on some new accessories. They're all going to be handmade. And yeah, some I'm also working on reviving some of my designs from the first collection, to really work with material that I already have. I think just we need to like reduce waste, and again, really taking advantage of the fact that I think that now everybody, I feel, is a little bit more conscious of what we do, and our actions have consequences. So I really want to just be able to kind of give myself a bit more, like, not restrictions, but almost, because I want to work with limited resources. So it forces you to be a bit more creative, because when you have everything at your disposal, you tend to waste. So I'm really excited for this new collection of just recycling fabric that we have in stock, and taking it out of the archives, and just like injecting new life to that collection, and just new exciting pieces for people. Yeah. I don't think of anything else, but I have like a lot of stuff.
Well, I mean, that sounds like a lot, so I'm excited to see like how it all turns out. But I did want to actually go ahead and open it up for questions now from our listeners and folks that are tuning in. So if you haven't already, go ahead and type your questions in the comment box so that we can see them, or comments if you have them. Emily and I are waiting, so go ahead, type those questions in if you have any, so we can answer them. I do see that there's one comment. This person says, Sarmat says, talk more about the back end. I guess the back, yeah.
Okay, so I okay, I actually like when starting out, I was working with some manufacturers in downtown LA, and I didn't like the quality. It just didn't look like my prototypes. So that was another thing that kind of made me decide to change how I would do certain things. So when I actually do all the pieces from the collection, those are things that I do or my assistants work on, because the problem also is I choose a lot of hard to work, hard to handle fabric, and you kind of need to know how to work with that fabric to actually cut it, sew it correctly. So I changed my business model to be a bit more of like almost ready or made to order. So I guess the back end for the production is that it's really just me and my assistants when it comes to the more haute couture elements, like the dresses, the all the fitted stuff. It's all done by us, um, and yeah, the accessories I mold some of them, but I mean I don't do the finished products. It's those are done by jewelers. But there are some accessories which I'll be introducing this year, which I'll be doing myself because that was actually that's how I learned how to do accessories through an internship, and I kind of fibbed about knowing how to work with tools because I just thought like, oh yeah, sure, it'll be mainly designing and not really putting them together until I got the internship. And on the first day, I had my desk with all these tools and metals and soldering, and I was just like, oh my God, okay. I guess I have to know it. I guess I have to learn. So after a bloody day, the the designer came and saw that I didn't know how to actually put pieces together, jewelry pieces together. So she taught me how to do one of the models, and I think after a week, I just devoted myself entirely to learn how to use the tools, and I fell in love with making accessories as well. So I'll be doing that too, just making like handmade accessories as well. Um, I mean, yeah, I guess I kind of like started slightly backwards, where I kind of started a bit more commercial, and then slowly, as I worked on my brand identity and what I wanted to do and what I wanted to put out there, I started to become more and more artisanal, which is what drew me to fashion anyway. So yeah, I mean, everything I produce, it's been touched and worked by me.
Okay. It's so I love like all the things you're saying. It's such an entrepreneurial spirit. Like you had to basically you taught yourself like how to do all the things so that you could do them like within your collection. I mean, as a business owner, like a small business owner, we're doing all the things until we can hire people, right? So we have to a lot of times teach ourselves how to be able to, do social media, do all the paperwork, do the contracts, hire, promote, fire, all those things.
Mhm.
We have to do ourselves. So, I applaud you for, although you fibbed to get the internship, I applaud you for actually figuring out how to use the tools to be able to make the accessories. Is that something that really wanted to do, wanted to learn how to do? So,
Mhm.
a lot of people wouldn't have done that. They would have just quit and said, oops, Like, shame on me. I'm
What you wanted.
So yeah, I mean, it's really cool that you like actually taught yourself how to do that. I know how to solder, but for a different reason. I actually used to be an electrical engineer, so
Oh wow.
I was soldering like circuit boards and wires, so
Yeah.
different soldering. So I totally feel your pain with that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, coconut oil really helps with scars.
All right, we have another comment. This is from Isabel. She says she just wants to say she's a big fan and can't wait to see your new line.
Oh, thank you.
Are there any other questions out there, guys? Any other questions or comments for Emily?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like you think I feel like no matter what you learn in school, you're never prepared until you actually get your first internship or job, and then that's when you realize, like, oh, I know nothing. You know?
Pretty much. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's with anything. They teach you all this stuff in school, and then you get there, you're like, yeah, this is nothing like what we were doing
Yeah.
in class. So, yeah.
I mean, in class, you feel like you're the king or queen of everything, like you own the world, and then once you're out, you're like, oh, no, I don't. But yeah, I like actually another I just oh gosh, like when sometimes I really think about all like the internships I did and certain things that happened, I'm just like I must really love fashion to actually still be here. And one time I was walking in the streets of Paris crying. I'm sure I looked a little unhinged, which I probably was, but I needed to deliver these huge boxes. And I mean, like, how? I didn't have a car, but they didn't care. It was just like, you have to do it. And that was a lot of the things. Like, it's like, this is what you need to do. I don't care how. You just have to get it done. And, but as much as like, I would cry or would go home and like vent to my roommate about it, I would always tell myself, like, well, if it's easy, then it's not going to be long lasting. So, and also it's making me sure that I really want this. And I also know that once I'm in that position, I would never treat anyone the way that sometimes I was treated because I'll remember what it's like to be there.
Yeah.
And yeah, and also and that one day where I was with those boxes and I ended up just getting I think I found a taxi or something and ended up like asking the taxi driver, "Can you please help me?" And he was so sweet because he ended up taking me everywhere that day, and I think he charged me for like if it were a 10-minute ride, which was nothing for being with me the whole day and like helping me take the boxes up. So there's really nice people out there. I really appreciate that. But I did, think like, well, if I'm going to be breaking my back for someone, I'd rather do it for myself too. So that was another thing that kind of pushed me to like, no, go do it for yourself.
Right. Absolutely. Your blood, sweat, and tears, right? So
Yeah.
that always pushes you to do what you ultimately want to do. Another question says, would you be touring in Canada soon, preferably in Alberta?
Oh, I mean, once I can, yeah, that'd be great. Um, yes, I will.
All right. All right. So, Emily, go ahead and tell the listeners how they can get in contact with you. Drop all your social handles, your website, so that we can have that.
So you can find me at emilydaccarett.com for my fashion and Emily Daccarett music for just getting up to date on music release, or sometimes like capsule collections that are directly tied to the music. My handle for Instagram, Facebook, Twitter is Emily Daccarett. And I know my last name is hard to spell, but I'm also the only Emily Daccarett. So you're gonna find me easily. I know it's not a very common last name, but we're a big family.
Awesome.
Chances are, if you run into another Daccarett, they're directly related to me. And yeah, so Emily Daccarett on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and you could find me on Spotify if you want to stream my music, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, any major streaming platform. You can find me there. So yeah.
Awesome. So for more information on Emily and how to contact her and connect with her, you can click on the link in the show notes for this episode at isimplyShe.com/podcast. That's at isimplyShe.com/podcast. Hopefully you guys have learned a wealth of knowledge about the fashion industry, and most importantly, how fashion can help amplify your feminine power. Such great information shared here by Emily today, and hopefully you were inspired by her story and her entrepreneurial spirit. And we definitely wish her the best of luck in her career, both as a fashion designer, singer, and a singer and songwriter. If you'd like to join a collective of women dedicated to being empowered and becoming the best version of themselves, join the She Army Facebook community, and that link is also in the show notes. So guys, I hope you found what we shared today to be helpful. And remember, you too can conquer if you slay hard every day. Thank you.
Thank you.